What I am about to reveal to you was never meant to survive into this age of comfort, convenience, and weakness. Rapid-fire breathing is not a wellness trend, not a meditation toy, not a relaxation exercise. It is an ancient metabolic weapon, deliberately buried, diluted, and mislabeled, because it creates a level of cellular energy that makes compliant humans difficult to control. You were warned away from it, using softer words like dangerous, unstable, or too intense. But those words were not meant to protect you. They were meant to keep you tired. I know this because I have seen the same breathing patterns carved into damaged manuscripts, hidden inside warrior manuals, and now reappear inside modern laboratories under sanitized names that strip away their original intent. This protocol was never about calm. It was about power. And power always scares those who profit from exhaustion. You feel it already, even if you cannot name it. The heavy mornings, the brain fog that no amount of coffee fixes, the strange fatigue that sits inside your muscles even when you rest. That is not age. That is not normal stress. That is mitochondrial starvation. Your cells are alive, but they are not producing enough ATP to support the life you are trying to live. And no one taught you that breath, not food, not supplements, not motivation, is the primary throttle of cellular energy. You were taught to breathe slowly, gently, quietly, as if life were something fragile. Ancient operators knew the opposite. They knew that short, explosive rhythmic breaths could force the cell to adapt or die. And the cells that adapted became stronger, faster, and more efficient at producing energy. I am speaking to you directly, because this is a choice point. Rapid-fire breathing places acute metabolic pressure on the system, the kind of pressure that modern humans never experience anymore. Pressure that activates dormant pathways. Pressure that tells mitochondria to wake up or be recycled. That is why this technique was feared. That is why it was restricted to warriors, monks, and initiates who had already proven discipline. You are not exhausted because you are broken. You are exhausted because you have never been taught how dangerous your breath truly is. You are living inside a silent energy crisis, and no one around you has the language to describe it accurately. Modern life has engineered a perfect storm for mitochondrial collapse. Constant psychological stress, artificial light, compressed posture, and most critically, shallow, restrained breathing that never challenges the respiratory system. Your breath has been domesticated. It barely moves the diaphragm, barely shifts blood gases, barely signals the cell to adapt. And mitochondria respond to signals, not intentions. When the signal is weak, ATP production drops. When ATP drops, everything degrades at once. Focus, motivation, immune resilience, muscle tone, emotional stability. You feel burned out. But what is actually happening is far more mechanical and far more fixable. Your cells are not failing because they lack nutrients. They are failing because they are never forced to work. Mitochondria evolved under conditions of intermittent stress. Sprinting, fighting, cold, heat, breath deprivation, and explosive recovery. Today, you exist in a flat metabolic line. No peaks, no shocks, no signals strong enough to justify overproduction of energy, so your mitochondria downregulate. They become conservative, efficient at survival, terrible at performance. This is why you can sleep 8 hours and still wake up drained. This is why motivation feels inaccessible. Energy is not missing. It is being intentionally withheld by your own cells because the environment tells them there is no need to produce more. This is the trap. and it is reinforced by advice that sounds safe. Breathe slowly. Relax more. Avoid intensity. That guidance is useful for calming an already overloaded system, but useless for rebuilding an underpowered one. You do not have an anxiety problem first. You have an energy problem first. And energy determines emotional regulation, not the other way around. When ATP is scarce, the brain becomes threat-sensitive, reactive, foggy. When ATP is abundant, calm emerges naturally. Ancient systems understood this inversion. They did not breathe fast to calm down. They breathed fast to generate surplus energy, then allowed calm to follow as a side effect. Until now, you have been trying to fix an energy deficit with comfort. Comfort does not build mitochondria. Stress does. The right kind, delivered precisely, through the breath. To understand why rapid-fire breathing works, you must abandon the cartoon version of mitochondria you were taught in school. Mitochondria are not passive batteries waiting for calories to arrive. They are reactive engines, constantly sensing oxygen levels, carbon dioxide pressure, acidity, and electrical demand. Breath is the fastest way to manipulate all four at once. When you breathe rapidly and forcefully in a controlled rhythm, you create oscillations in blood gases that the cell interprets as an emergency. Oxygen floods in, carbon dioxide is aggressively expelled, pH shifts, and the electron transport chain inside the mitochondria is pushed out of its lazy equilibrium. This is not comfortable signaling. This is survival signaling. And survival signaling forces overcompensation. Here is the part that was never explained to you. ATP production does not scale linearly. Under mild conditions, mitochondria operate in maintenance mode. Under acute stress, they enter expansion mode. Rapid-fire breathing creates short bursts of respiratory alkalosis, followed by recovery, and that swing is the trigger. The mitochondria respond by increasing enzyme activity, tightening the efficiency of oxidative phosphorylation, and upregulating biogenesis pathways that create more mitochondria altogether. This is why slow, gentle breathing makes you calm but weak, while explosive breathing makes you alert, warm, and electrically alive. One soothes the nervous system, the other trains it. Think of your mitochondria like a power grid that has never experienced a surge. No spikes, no demand, no reason to reinforce capacity. Rapid-fire breathing is a controlled surge. It tells the cell that energy demand is about to explode, and failure is not an option. So ATP output rises, not symbolically, measurably. This is why subjects exposed to intermittent respiratory stress show increased metabolic rate even at rest. Their baseline changes. Their floor rises. Energy becomes the default instead of fatigue. This is also why the technique was labeled dangerous. Not because it damages the system, but because it reveals how much unused capacity you actually have. Once the mitochondria remember how to respond to demand, they do not forget easily. You stop living on emergency reserves and start living on surplus. And surplus energy changes behavior. It changes posture, voice, decisions. That is the real mechanism. And that is why this protocol was never meant for everyone. Long before laboratories had microscopes or named ATP, human beings mapped energy through direct experience, and they treated breath as a dangerous technology. Rapid-fire breathing did not appear once in history. It surfaced repeatedly, independently, wherever humans were pushed to their limits. In fragmented yogic texts, it was hidden inside fire breath practices, reserved only for advanced initiates. In warrior cultures, it appeared as pre-battle breathing, meant to flood the body with heat and aggression without losing control. In monastic combat traditions, it was practiced in secrecy because it altered endurance. pain tolerance, and perception so dramatically that untrained minds could not integrate the effect. These systems did not argue about relaxation. They argued about regulation under extreme internal pressure. What unites these traditions is not mysticism, but precision. The breath was fast, forceful, rhythmic, and intentionally uncomfortable. The discomfort was the signal. Ancient practitioners understood that when breathing crosses a certain intensity threshold, the body stops prioritizing comfort and starts prioritizing output. They did not speak about mitochondria, but they spoke about inner fire, stored vitality, and stolen strength. Those were metaphors for the same phenomenon. Modern science now observes under fluorescent lights cells responding to respiratory stress by amplifying energy production beyond baseline survival needs. Then something changed. As societies stabilized, centralized power grew, and rituals were standardized. Techniques that produced too much autonomy were quietly softened. Fast breathing became symbolic. Fire breath became gentle. Practices once used to build warriors were rebranded for calming civilians. Anything that reliably produced heat, aggression, clarity, and physical dominance was reframed as unsafe. Not eliminated outright, just blurred enough to lose its edge. By the time science rediscovered rapid respiratory protocols, they were stripped of narrative and renamed with sterile labels, disconnected from the ancient warnings that said clearly, "This changes you." Modern research did not invent this protocol. It accidentally rediscovered it. When physiologists began studying intermittent hypoxia, respiratory alkalosis, and metabolic stress, they noticed the same outcomes described in ancient texts. Increased resilience, elevated baseline energy, sharpened focus, and reduced perception of fatigue. The difference is that ancient systems respected the danger and trained the operator accordingly. They knew this was not breath for comfort. This was breath for transformation. And transformation always carries risk, not because it harms the body, but because it disrupts identity. You were never meant to stumble into this accidentally. It was meant to be chosen. And once chosen, practiced with intent, discipline, and respect for its power. That is why it survived in fragments instead of manuals. That is why it reappears now, when exhaustion has become normal and weakness has been medicalized. The knowledge was never lost. It was waiting for a nervous system strong enough to handle it again. Now we arrive at the point where most explanations become intentionally vague. Because precision here is what separates transformation from chaos. Rapid fire breathing is simple in appearance and unforgiving in execution. You begin upright, spine vertical, chest open, jaw unclenched. This is not optional. A collapsed posture collapses airflow and distorts the signal to the brainstem. The breath is driven forcefully through the nose if possible, mouth if necessary, but always active, sharp, and rhythmic. Inhale and exhale are equal in intensity, with no pause between them. This is not hyperventilation by accident. This is hyperventilation by command. The diaphragm pumps like a piston. The chest expands aggressively. The belly snaps inward on the exhale. If you look calm while doing this, you are doing it wrong. The rhythm matters more than the speed. Too fast, and the signal becomes noise. Too slow, and the mitochondria ignore it. The ideal range sits just below panic, where the body believes something urgent is happening, but the mind remains in control. This is why ancient systems demanded discipline first. You maintain this breathing for a short, brutal window, typically 30 to 60 seconds, no longer at the beginning. This is enough to radically alter blood gases, elevate heart rate, and flood tissues with oxygen while stripping carbon dioxide fast enough to trigger cellular alarm. You will feel heat rising, tingling in the hands or face. Lightheadedness. These are not side effects. They are indicators that the protocol is working. When the cycle ends, you do not collapse or gasp. You switch immediately to slow nasal breathing and allow the system to recover while maintaining posture. This recovery phase is where adaptation locks in. Mitochondria respond not just to stress, but to stress followed by control. One cycle is powerful. 2 cycles are enough for beginners. More is not better. More is reckless. The ancient warnings were clear on this point. Overuse does not accelerate results. It destabilizes the nervous system and blunts the signal. This protocol thrives on restraint. The most common mistake is chasing sensation instead of signal. People push longer, faster, harder, thinking intensity equals effectiveness. It does not. Precision does. Another mistake is using this breath when emotionally unstable or sleep-deprived. Rapid-fire breathing amplifies whatever state you bring into it. If your system is already overloaded, the protocol will expose that weakness mercilessly. This is why it was framed as dangerous. Not because it damages healthy systems, but because it reveals imbalance instantly. Executed correctly, this breathing session feels like flipping a hidden switch. The body becomes warm, alert, and charged. Thoughts sharpen. Fatigue temporarily disappears. But the real work happens after, at the cellular level, where mitochondria remember the demand you placed on them and begin restructuring to meet it next time. This is not a trick. It is a training signal. And like all powerful training signals, it demands respect. The effects of rapid-fire breathing do not unfold randomly. They follow a predictable biological timeline because mitochondria adapt in phases, not miracles. After the first session, the change is immediate but transient. You feel a surge of heat, alertness, and mental clarity that can last from minutes to hours. This is acute ATP overproduction combined with nervous system activation. It fades because your baseline has not changed yet. Many people mistake this phase for the result. It is not. It is proof of access. It shows you what is possible, not what is permanent. After 7 days of disciplined practice, limited to 1 or 2 controlled sessions per day, something subtler happens. Your resting energy begins to rise. You wake up with less friction. Focus comes online faster. Physical tasks feel lighter. This is the point where mitochondrial enzymes involved in oxidative phosphorylation increase their efficiency. The system is learning that energy demand is no longer occasional. It is expected. Stress tolerance improves not because stress is gone, but because ATP availability is higher. You stop crashing as easily because the cell has stopped hoarding fuel. At 30 days, structural changes begin. Mitochondrial density increases. This is biogenesis, not metaphor. Your cells are literally building more power plants. Endurance improves even if you do not change your training. Brain fog recedes because neurons are among the most energy-hungry cells in the body. Emotional regulation stabilizes because the nervous system is no longer operating under chronic energy debt. This is often when people report feeling like themselves again, though most cannot remember the last time they had this much baseline energy. This phase is dangerous in a different way, because confidence returns before discipline is fully established. At 90 days, the protocol stops feeling like an intervention and starts feeling like maintenance. Your baseline, ATP production, is higher, even on days you do not practice. Recovery from stress accelerates. Cold tolerance, heat tolerance, and cognitive endurance improve. You have effectively raised your metabolic floor. This is where ancient systems warned practitioners to remain grounded. More energy amplifies intent. If your life is chaotic, the chaos accelerates. If your direction is clear, progress accelerates. Rapid-fire breathing does not choose for you. It empowers what is already there. This timeline is not a promise. It is a pattern observed whenever respiratory stress is applied consistently and intelligently. Missed days, overdue sessions, or ignore recovery, and the curve flattens. Respect the rhythm, and the results compound quietly until energy stops being something you chase and starts being something you command. Stop. Now comes the point where comfort ends and responsibility begins, because rapid-fire breathing is not neutral knowledge. Once you activate it correctly, you cannot unknow what your body is capable of producing. This protocol does not simply increase ATP. It removes the biological excuse of low energy that quietly protects your current life from change. When mitochondria are forced into surplus, the nervous system shifts from survival mode into command mode. You feel it as restlessness, urgency, a subtle intolerance for stagnation. Ancient traditions warned about this explicitly, not because the breath was evil, but because energy without direction destabilizes identity faster than exhaustion ever could. This is why I am not inviting you to experiment casually. You either commit with restraint or you walk away entirely. 1 to 2 sessions per day. No chasing intensity. No stacking techniques. No proving anything. Treat this like recalibrating a reactor, not lighting fireworks. Overuse does not make you stronger. It makes you erratic. Underuse keeps you weak. Precision is the line between empowerment and self-sabotage. This breath magnifies what already exists in you. Discipline becomes sharper. Avoidance becomes unbearable. Truth becomes louder. That is the real risk. Here is the challenge, and it is not motivational. Run this protocol for 30 days exactly as instructed. Observe how your mornings change. Observe how quickly your mind locks onto tasks. Observe how your tolerance for meaningless stress collapses, while your capacity for real effort expands. Pay attention to what your body starts demanding once ATP is no longer scarce. Movement, action, decisions. Rapid fire. Breathing does not calm you so you can endure your life. It energizes you so you can no longer tolerate misalignment. If you choose not to do this, nothing catastrophic will happen. You will remain functional, tired, manageable, and safely distracted. That path is well lit and heavily populated. If you choose to do this, understand that the breath does not negotiate. It responds to execution. Your mitochondria are ancient, efficient, and brutally honest. They will meet the demand you place on them, and once they do, the question is no longer whether this protocol works. The question is whether you are prepared to live with the level of energy it unlocks. This was never meant to inspire you. It was meant to confront you. The protocol is simple. The consequences are not. The breath is ready. Your cells are listening. Decide carefully.